Welcome to NTD News. I'm Paul Graney. Here are today's top stories. Things went Joe Biden's way on Super Tuesday too, with wins in Mississippi, Missouri, and most importantly, Michigan. Biden says his campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination has taken off. The White House is meeting with tech companies to talk about ways to reduce disruptions caused by the coronavirus. UK lawmakers urge the British government not to give Chinese tech giant Huawei a role in Britain's 5G network. And Afghanistan prepares for a prisoner swap with the Taliban as part of a peace deal with the US. Joe Biden is the new Democratic frontrunner after 6 states voted yesterday. He pulled off a convincing win in Michigan, securing 72 delegates.
Joe Biden building on his Super Tuesday dominance, winning Mississippi, Missouri, and the big prize of the night, Michigan.
Just over a week ago, many of the pundits declared that this candidacy was dead. Now we're very much alive.
Michigan is a key Midwestern swing state. President Trump won in 2016. Then, in 2018, a blue wave swept over the state. Now it's considered to be a bellwether of where blue-collar white and African-American voters lean.
We are solidly purple, and that's why no one should ever take Michigan for granted.
The Great Lakes state helping the former vice president pad his delegate lead, while making the case he is the candidate to beat.
This campaign is taking off, and I believe we're going to do well from this point on.
The results, a blow to Bernie Sanders, who won Michigan's primary 4 years ago and hoped to kick off a comeback.
We need to win every state in the country.
But the coronavirus crisis threatened to upstage Super Tuesday Part 2. Election workers sorted ballots wearing gloves, and both candidates canceled their planned rallies with supporters.
The last thing in the world we will ever want to do is put anybody in danger.
As the novel coronavirus impacts the United States, both campaigns are taking action and say they can lead in times of crisis as commander-in-chief.
This whole coronavirus issue is a matter of presidential leadership.
But now Sanders is also trying to prove to the public his campaign has a future.
And Sanders has won North Dakota, giving him his first win in the 6 states that voted. And on the same day, presidential candidate Joe Biden was seen cursing and seeming to threaten a Detroit auto worker in an argument over gun rights. The confrontation happened in a crowd of workers during a tour of an auto plant. Videos of the argument are now circulating online.
A worker at the Fiat Chrysler plant in Detroit, Michigan, had questions for Joe Biden over his stance on gun rights. He said Biden wanted to end the Second Amendment and take away guns. Biden, looking straight at the man, hastily cursed at him before telling a campaign worker to shush. He said he supported the Second Amendment and that he had a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, and that his sons hunt. The worker challenged Biden over his words at a rally in Dallas, Texas, where Biden tells the crowd that Representative Beto O'Rourke will be the one who leads his gun control effort.
I want to make something clear. I'm going to guarantee you this is not the last you're seeing of this guy. You're going to take care of the gun problem with me.
Before dropping out of the presidential race, O'Rourke said, quote, "Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15. The confrontation continued with a further expletive from Biden and a threat to go outside with the worker. This is the latest in a series of tense confrontations and gaffes made by Biden during his campaign trail. Biden made the comments as voters flocked to polling places for the 2020 primary elections in 6 states on Tuesday.
And it looks like the coronavirus may disrupt the rest of the race. The Biden and Sanders campaigns now want to hold the next presidential debate without a live audience.
Voters in Columbia, Missouri came out to cast their ballots on Tuesday for the state's Democratic primary, but some were taking precautions. The virus has killed at least 30 people in the United States and infected over 1,000, with nearly 3/4 of U.S. states reporting cases. Many hand-to-hand transactions take place while casting votes, and voters and election officials stand in close proximity to each other. There are mixed responses as to whether it is safe to be out voting. A 92-year-old Missouri voter and World War II veteran said he found the coronavirus situation scary, but voting was a duty and a privilege that he was not prepared to miss. Another voter had no concerns over the virus.
I am currently not afraid of being out in public, and also voting is so important to the American experience. People have literally died for the right to vote, so it's important for us to be out and do our civic duty.
Coronavirus or not?
Coronavirus or not.
Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden won 4 of the 6 states on Super Tuesday 2. At the time of reporting, he had won Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, and Idaho. Washington state is so far too close to call. Sanders won North Dakota. Biden led the delegate count heading into Tuesday's contest. Based on partial results as of Wednesday morning, Biden won at least 176 delegates and Sanders at least 110. Both candidates canceled election night rallies on Tuesday, citing recommendations from public health officials to avoid assembling large indoor crowds. Biden's campaign also canceled a Thursday Get Out the Vote event in Florida. That state and Arizona, Illinois, and Ohio are set to hold primary contests next week. The Democratic National Committee said Sunday's presidential debate in Arizona would not have a live audience because of concerns over the coronavirus.
And the White House will meet large technology companies today to coordinate efforts over the outbreak. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy confirmed the meeting would include Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, Apple, and Microsoft. Some companies will be forced to join by teleconference. The meeting is to be led by U.S. Chief Technology Officer Michael Kratsios. White House officials are also meeting with the airline, financial, and healthcare industries to discuss ways to reduce the impact of the virus. And the president is also asking Congress to cut payroll taxes and employ stimulus measures to offset the economic impact of the virus. President Trump says he himself feels healthy but wouldn't be against getting tested.
President Trump paying a visit to Capitol Hill on Tuesday to ask Congress for payroll tax cuts and other stimulus measures to lessen the economic impact of the Wuhan virus. Trump pushing for a broad payroll tax cut, but others inside the White House want a targeted response for industries hit the hardest. After meeting with Senate Republicans at the Capitol, the president said he personally feels healthy, but he wouldn't be against getting tested for the virus.
Something I would do, but again, spoke to the White House doctor, terrific guy, talented guy. He said he sees no reason to do it. There's no symptoms, no anything.
Earlier, the president mentioned the cruise and airline industries would receive aid, but didn't give any more details. Economists and trade groups say the administration needs to act fast as the country braces for a major economic downturn. But the president assured Americans that the situation is under control.
We're prepared and we're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. Everybody has to be vigilant and has to be careful, but be calm.
The CDC announced it has tested 4,900 people as of Monday, but lawmakers have criticized it for its slow pace in testing. President Trump responding to the criticism, saying the administration has sped up the process where now anyone that needs a test can get one.
And in New York, authorities are temporarily shutting down an area that holds the most coronaviruses in the state and the largest cluster of cases in the U.S. The state's governor will send in the National Guard to assist.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is going to transform the epicenter of the coronavirus cases in New York into a contained area. The containment will last 2 weeks. He will send the National Guard in to help deliver food and clean public spaces.
It is a dramatic action, but it is the largest cluster in the country. And this is literally a matter of life and death. That's not an overly rhetorical statement.
Schools, places of worship, and other areas where people gather will be closed in an area of New Rochelle. The city holds 108 of New York State's 173 cases. The affected part is about 1 mile in diameter. It's north of New York City and part of Westchester County. Cuomo said he knows people in the area won't be a fan of the shutdown, but added that it's necessary.
This will be a period of disruption for the local community. I understand that. Local shop owners don't like the disruption. Nobody does. Local politicians don't like the disruption.
Cuomo said the 2-week shutdown will start on March 12th. By comparison, New York City holds only 36 confirmed coronavirus cases.
And in other news, U.S. and Canadian jets have intercepted Russian scouting aircraft off the coast of Alaska. The North American Aerospace Defense Command says 2 Russian maritime aircraft flew in the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone for about 4 hours on Monday. They remained in international airspace but came as close as 50 nautical miles to the Alaskan coast. NORAD aircraft escorted the Russian jets their entire time in the zone. Russian aircraft do operate in the area as part of their training efforts, but this comes as U.S. officials have expressed concerns over Russia's increased activity in the Arctic. And in other news, Afghanistan's president is preparing to release 1,500 Taliban prisoners beginning this week. It's part of an effort to secure a peace deal with the insurgent group. The U.S. is also withdrawing troops from the country as part of a related agreement.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is getting ready to release 1,500 Taliban prisoners beginning this week. That's according to a decree Ghani signed, which Reuters saw on Tuesday. It requires all released Taliban prisoners to provide, quote, a written guarantee not to return to the battlefield. In exchange, the Taliban has agreed to hand over 1,000 Afghan troops. This prisoner swap has been the most contentious part of the U.S. Taliban peace deal signed last month, and one that Ghani had rejected last week. The United States has already begun its part in withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. In return, the Taliban made pledges to dial down violence, like not cooperating with terrorists that target the U.S. The United Nations has backed the push to end war, but at a Tuesday Security Council meeting, the U.S. warned the Taliban to keep its promises.
We acknowledge the Taliban have taken steps to stop attacks in cities and against major bases. But more needs to be done, and we urge them to also reduce violence against Afghan forces in the countryside, to give intra-Afghan negotiations and peace the opportunities to succeed.
Ghani's prisoner swap is supposed to help pave the way for his government's talks with the Taliban and would roll out over 15 days as the talks get underway. But a dispute over who leads the Afghan government may complicate the process. While Ghani was sworn in for a second term on Monday, his political rival, former Chief Executive Abdullah, said he's the country's rightful leader. And he held his own parallel inauguration, separated only by a wall. Both ceremonies were disrupted by a mortar attack on the presidential compound.
And now to the UK, where senior members of the UK's ruling party are warning the British government about the risks of tech giant Huawei. They're unhappy with the decision to allow the Chinese firm a role in the 5G network. Jane Worrell reports from London.
Heated words in the UK's House of Commons on Tuesday, led by a former Conservative leader. They were pushing for a law to exclude Huawei from the UK's 5G network by the start of 2023.
And now we look to the future, and what that suggests to us is we're going to become completely and utterly in thrall to providers who we cannot possibly trust.
They didn't succeed, but they did gain support. 282 politicians voted in favour of this law, but 306 voted against it, a slim majority of 24. It's worth noting that some of those wanting to exclude Huawei from the UK's 5G networks are senior lawmakers.
If we have to wait a little longer, pay a little more, just for the security of this country, then we should do so.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has repeatedly warned the UK about Huawei. And last week, in a rare move, US senators wrote a letter to the House of Commons urging the UK to reconsider its decision on Huawei. In the UK, Huawei is classified as a high-risk vendor. But in January, Boris Johnson's government decided to allow the Chinese tech giant to roll in the UK's 5G network. Huawei's market share is capped at 35%. Some British politicians think it should be stripped to zero.
Having a limit of 35% is a bit of a nonsense. It's like saying prisoners are allowed to build 35% of a prison wall.
The UK's digital minister said that Johnson's government plans to phase out high-risk vendors, but did not say when. Some politicians want more reassurance.
Huawei is an arm of the Chinese state. That is exactly why our fellow members of the Five Eyes are so frustrated with the government's behaviour.
US Secretary of Defense Mark Esper has said the US doesn't agree with Johnson's government approach to Huawei. The UK is likely to face more opposition on its Huawei decision. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
And coming up, relations are declining between the Czech Republic and China. Their latest conflict leads a Czech lawmaker to demand China's ambassador, be replaced.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Censor first, inform the public second. That's how the Chinese regime has handled the spread of coronavirus information. But a recent study reveals how the Chinese Communist Party is silencing discussion about the epidemic.
According to a study released last week by Toronto-based research group Citizen Lab, the Chinese regime started censoring discussion about the coronavirus as early as December 31st last year. The report shows hundreds of keyword combinations were blacklisted on the country's most popular social media platform. The study shows on December 31st, 2019, 45 keywords related to the outbreak were added to the block lists of Huawei.com, a live streaming platform in China. The action came one day after several doctors tried to warn the public about a new unknown virus. Those keywords include unknown Wuhan pneumonia, Wuhan seafood market, and SARS outbreak in Wuhan. Many of them are so broad that they effectively block any reference to the virus. At that time, there were already 104 confirmed coronavirus cases. But it took another 3 weeks, on January 20th, for Chinese authorities to make the scope of the epidemic public, including the virus's ability to transmit from person to person. The censorship may have started in the early stages, but continued to expand and blockade a wide range of content. Chinese people heavily rely on WeChat, the country's most popular social media platform for news and information. 132 keyword combinations were blocked on the platform in January, while 384 new combinations were censored in the first 2 weeks of February. The censored keywords include those that criticize the party's mishandling of the outbreak. They even cover terms that mention the regime's policies surrounding the outbreak, like Xi Jinping goes to Wuhan. Some are broad reference to the virus, like US CDC plus coronavirus, while others reference the scale of the outbreak, like Wuhan pneumonia epidemic out of control. The study adds that the censorship may be a result of social media companies acting under specific government direction to control the narrative. And although China's official numbers show the situation stabilizing inside the country, the true picture could be very different.
We'll keep you updated on the flow of information coming out of China as the situation develops. And the Czech Republic's Prime Minister says China should replace its ambassador in the Czech Republic. This comes after the government received a threatening letter from Chinese authorities.
Amid already rising tensions between the two nations, Czech Republic Prime Minister Andrej Babiš says China should replace its ambassador posted in his country. His remark comes in response to a threatening letter from China's embassy in Prague, which was sent to the Czech president's office in January. The letter threatened retaliation from Beijing against Czech companies operating in China if a senior Czech lawmaker went ahead with a planned visit to Taiwan. It suggested companies like Volkswagen subsidiary Skoda Auto and Lender Home Credit Group would suffer if the then Senate Speaker Jaroslav Kubera visited the island. Kubera died before he could make the trip, but his successor will likely push China to replace the ambassador. Czech television reports that Prime Minister Babiš would support the demand. Diplomatic ties between the two countries cooled last year when city authorities in Prague showed support for Tibet. But relations were already declining in December 2018 when the Czech cybersecurity watchdog warned about the risks of using Chinese telecoms equipment made by tech giants Huawei and ZTE.
And still to come, the Food and Drug Administration is taking action against companies that sell flavored vaping products despite new policies to prohibit it. Find out what's being done after the break.
It's absolutely fantastic.
I don't know how you would not enjoy this.
It's like a painting coming to life.
I laughed, I cried, I was so touched.
The scenes, the sets, the costumes.
The dancing, the choreographing, the music, everything was just spectacular.
There's no words for it.
It's just heavenly.
This was the best ever.
The dancers, your mouth just drops. You're like, wow, this is just beautiful to watch.
The technique is flawless. Really, it is.
The skill and the talent on the stage are jaw-dropping.
They perform in perfect unison. They're just stunning.
The actual ambiance of the background, there was always the beautiful landscape, and it was so colorful.
I find the music amazing.
The orchestra, the instruments, it was really brilliant. So moving and so powerful and uplifting.
The idea of everybody coming from a celestial place. It's all beauty and truth and light. It's very emotional.
It gives me inspiration. True blessing to be here and witness it all.
If somebody wants to know about China, there's nothing better than seeing Shenyang.
Shenyang is definitely something you cannot describe.
It's something you have to see to believe.
It's a must-see.
And I would recommend this to all my friends.
Don't wait. Get your tickets now.
The FDA is cracking down on companies that continue to sell flavored cartridge-based vaping products in violations of the agency's new policy. The policy took effect in February and prioritizes enforcement actions against cartridge-based vaping products in flavors other than tobacco and menthol. The FDA sent out 22 warning letters to companies that make and sell flavored cartridges. Those companies include both online retailers and brick-and-mortar businesses like gas stations and convenience stores. The companies now have 15 days to respond. The FDA says a top priority is protecting young people from the dangers of tobacco use, especially e-cigarettes. And in New York, hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes are in short supply. This means new regulations for store owners. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more.
New Yorkers are buying out hand sanitizer amid the viral outbreak. And effective today, New York City has made it illegal for business owners to drastically raise the price of hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes. On Monday, Mayor Bill de Blasio called it immoral.
Business owners, and I think this is a very small minority of business owners, but don't even think about price gouging in the middle of this crisis. It's absolutely immoral. It's unfair to your fellow New Yorkers.
One store that was fined reportedly sold 2-liter bottles of Perel for $109. Online, these dispensers can go for about a quarter of that price, but now the city can give store owners fines of up to $500. But should the city determine what price is too high when people have the option to find the same product elsewhere?
Absolutely, I understand that, but I also understand supply and demand. And I think obviously retailers shouldn't be charging more, but I see people in the street selling it. So I guess that if they're selling it on the street, they can sell it for whatever.
But if you need something, like insulin's a great example, right? People have died over insulin gouging. And that's really greed at its worst, and it's unconscionable. And this is sort of along those lines, at least the way I see it.
And state officials are also taking action. Governor Cuomo showcasing the state's own brand of hand sanitizer.
It has a very nice floral bouquet Little I detect the lilac.
They'll be distributed to schools, public agencies, and the areas most affected by the Wuhan virus. Meanwhile, the Justice Department has warned that companies that price fix or rig bids for personal health equipment like face masks could be prosecuted. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
And coming up, the Big Apple debuts the Western Hemisphere's highest sky deck. And imagine this, sleeping next to wild elephants in a jungle bubble. More on that when we return.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
A new skyscraper with a glass-bottom observation deck is offering a unique view of the Big Apple, 1,100 feet straight down.
Viewers with a fear of heights may want to look away or at least squint hard and attempt not to vomit, because this is the highest outdoor observation deck in the Western Hemisphere, and it is now open for business in the Big Apple. At 1,100 feet and 100 floors up, Edge at Hudson Yards offers panoramic views of Manhattan's skyline, as well as, brace yourself, crystal clear views straight down through a glass bottom floor. And if that's not extreme enough, the surrounding glass panels are angled outward to give visitors the feeling they're leaning out over the city. Yikes. If you like your adventures located safe and sound on the ground, an eye-opening experience awaits you in Thailand. The Anantara Golden Triangle Elephant Camp and Resort allows guests to spend the night cozied up right next to rescued wild elephants. They call the accommodations jungle bubbles. Each air-conditioned dome has a king-size bed and a washroom with a shower, and you can't beat the views. But before you start packing your trunks, know this: the bubbles rent for roughly $560 a night. Not exactly peanuts, but at least it's going to a good cause. The Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation cares for about 24 of the rescued animals and aims to improve the lives of captive elephants.
It's a long way down. And a whale is back in open water after dodging 2 close calls off the coast of Chile. The Chilean Navy says the whale beached itself after escaping a pack of killer whales that went after it. The Navy took this video of the whale stranded near the southern tip of Chile on Monday. The whale eventually managed to work its way out of shallow waters and swim back into the ocean. However, 2 other whales that were stranded as well were unfortunately not so lucky. The Navy statement says the killer whales managed to get to those 2. And that's all the latest updates for now. Thanks for tuning in. Catch up again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.